All right, it is 6 o'clock. We are going to call this meeting for the Planning Commission for February 24th, 2025 to order. Can we get roll call?
Ankle,
Here.
Ware, White, Stokes,
Here.
Carter,
Here.
Kirkley, yes, Freeman,
Yeah.
Vidal,
Yes.
All right, if everyone will stand, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to move on to the minutes. Hope everyone's had a chance to review them. Do we have any corrections or do we have a motion to accept?
I make a motion to accept the minutes from the planning meeting. Let's see the date. January 27th. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes from January 27, 2025. Do we have a second? All right, we have a second. Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Vidal,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
that's all.
All right, we don't have any old business, so we will move on to new business, starting with case number 2025-010. It's a site plan review for the installation of electric vehicle charging facility at 7255 Interstate Boulevard on land consisting of 10.3 acres. Under the C4 zoning, it's by Dewberry Engineering Inc. And I'm going to turn this over to our director so he can give us our presentation.
Thank you. And I'll do a quick presentation and then we can switch it over. Case number 2025-010 is a site plan review for the installation of an electric vehicle charging facility at 7255 Interstate Boulevard on land consisting of 10.3 acres under C4 zoning by Dewberry Engineers Incorporated. And up here on the screen is the aerial view of the property. Exactly at that spot where that arrow comes down, at the tip of that arrow is going to be where the parking, where the charging stalls will be. And just to go through the zoning real quick, on the next slide, we have C4 zoning. All the parcels around it are C4 as well, so this is all completely commercial zoning. And the idea is to have the parking spaces in an area where you can leave your car and go shop for a while. Next slide, please. And then here is a Google Street View of where that proposed charging station will be. It'll take up the area where there's currently existing parking spaces, so it's not going to, this will not be in the way or change the flow of traffic or really change the flow of any movement through the area. Next slide, please. And then for a site plan, there in that circle is going to be where these charging stalls will be. And so there will be 16 charging stalls, and then one 2000A switchgear, and then one pad-mounted utility transformer, and then 2 light poles. Next slide, please. And this is a little bit more of a detailed view of what that would all look like if anybody wants to get into those details here. but I will jump to the conclusion. So overall, the updates to the target parking lot site plan will not result in the reduction of parking available at the store. We don't see there being, we don't see this taking up any necessary spaces. The added electric charging station will not increase traffic hazards within the area, and the site plan provides adequate stormwater drainage for parking area and does not increase the impervious surface area of the site. And as put in the applicant's packet, it's also not going to be in any designated FEMA flood layers, so it'll be safe on that too. And then that concludes the presentation. There's a possible motion at the end.
All right, thank you. So does anyone have any questions for Andrew or the applicant? And if you could, sir, go ahead and just state your name and your address for me, please.
My name is Jim Leverett. I work for Tesla, and I'm the project manager for this site.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant or for our director?
And that's where all the employees park at, where you putting it.
Out in the outskirts of that parking lot?
I used to work at Kroger when I was in high school, started there, so.
Gotcha.
That was our favorite parking spot over there.
I do have a question. Will the lighting be okay? Like, just looking at the picture where it's gonna be, I'm just assuming it's gonna be like, if I'm facing Target, like the picture, it's gonna be to this back left area. Is there gonna be enough lighting? Like, you have to leave it long enough? I'm just curious.
We are going to be adding lighting to our charging area, so we'll add 2 light poles to make sure that it's illuminated well. We're not going to change any of the Target parking lot lighting, but we will add some additional lighting for our area.
And I have another question. So this is gonna be right off of I-55, right where South Haven and Horn Lake split. Is there anything, and it might show up in the cars, I don't know.
Yeah.
That will say, hey, there's a charging station right over here, so it will be able to pull these people off the interstate?
Yeah, we do not typically put up any signage on the interstate or any really much signage at all. For Tesla vehicles, it's all built into the navigation system, and so they'll automatically be routed there. For other electric vehicles, some of them have it in their navigation, some do not. It just depends on the make and model, but
Gotcha, thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
This one's kind of more out of curiosity, and just so everybody knows as well. How does the adapting work from one brand to another? And
Sure.
We just want to make sure that this will be useful for everybody that has electric vehicles.
Sure. Right now, there's 2 main charge ports. I use the analogy, it used to be like USB-C and Lightning for cell phones, how there were 2. And eventually Apple switched to USB-C, and so now most cell phones all use the same standard. And so in the electric vehicle charging world, there was a Tesla connector, which is called NACS, North American Charging Standard is what it's named. And then there was a lot of other vehicle manufacturers were using CCS, which was the combined charging standard. But over the last year, all major automakers have announced that they're going to switch to the Tesla connector because we have so many charging stations out there compared to everybody else. So the first couple of vehicles with it built in have already started rolling out. Hyundai has some that you can buy that already have our connector on them, and most automakers have announced that this year or next year their vehicles will start with that connector. For anybody who has an existing vehicle or an older vehicle, those manufacturers are selling adapters that they can buy to use at Tesla charging sites. And there's a list on our website of all the OEMs that have access to the charging network. I think right now we've got like 10 different ones, and the rest of them are being onboarded this year. So right now, Ford, Rivian, General Motors, Volvo, Nissan, Mercedes-Benz, Lucid, Polestar can all charge at Tesla chargers. And then over the next few months, BMW, Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, Toyota, others will be coming on board. So by the end of this year, or over the next few months, all this stuff should be happening. And then, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
How is it going to affect our power grid?
Tesla, sorry, say that question one more time.
How is it going to affect our power grid in this area?
Sure. It shouldn't have any impact on it. We are working with Entergy to power the charging site, and they treat it like they treat any business or customer that comes into the area. So they look at available power on that power line. We work with them to build out the additional power line infrastructure to our site, procure the transformer, and power the charging site once it's up and running. But it's not any different than most any commercial customer coming in for from a like power company perspective.
And my question is, once this is approved, how long does it usually take the project once y'all get started from start to finish?
Once we have permits in hand, so we've already got designs, which you guys have a copy of. We have to get the permits from y'all, and then we have to work through with the power company, the easement, and so those three things are like the main items to get done. And then the last piece of it is the power company has to have the transformer available for us to energize the site. Over the last couple of years, the lead time on transformers has been fairly long, so we ordered it with the power company last year. So depending on exactly when it comes in, we'll determine probably when we can build the site. But once we start construction, typically it's, call it 2 months from start of construction to opening up, plus or minus. It's usually pretty quick construction timeline.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
My question is, I understand what y'all doing, I like that answer what she asked, will y'all be providing your own meter for energy versus using the city?
Yeah, so we will be, we are working with Entergy to procure power and service for the site. We will have a meter and an account with Entergy, and we will pay for all of the utility costs and energy associated with the site.
Pretty much just like any other business.
Just like any business, yep. So we're building a facility, and we will pay for all things related to that facility from the utilities perspective.
Have y'all did a study on how many electric cars actually in the area?
Yeah, so we decided to build sites when one of the main drivers for building a site is our belief that we need it because of demand. We have an existing site. It's actually very close by. It's in South Haven, Mississippi, just across the interstate. And that site is getting quite a bit of traffic, tons of traffic. And so the reason we're building this site is because we foresee more need than that existing site can meet. So we'll have 2 sites at the same exit.
Your other site, South Haven, is right there by Burger
It
King,
is,
right?
yep,
It's always busy.
right. And that's exactly why we're here today talking about this additional site. And this site that site has 8 charging stations. This one will have 16, which is part of like future proofing because of the need that we see here.
And then they'll come over here, charge their car, and get out. How long will it take to charge? Something that'll take like 30 minutes.
I would say the typical charging session is 25 to 30 minutes for people who are at our sites.
Can they leave the car there and go eat?
They can leave the car there if they want to go into Target or Kroger or wherever else, or they can stay with the car.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
What are the different kinds of charging stations, and what kind is this one?
Yeah, there's 2 main types of charging stations in the public. There's a level 2 charger, which would take 4 to 8 hours to charge a vehicle, depending on the vehicle. And then there's a DC fast charger. So these are DC fast chargers, and there's some variability in how fast they charge, but again, it's probably 25 to 30 minutes on these. So these are for these Tesla superchargers.
All right, thank you. All right, does So do we have a motion, or do we need any other discussion?
Have a motion.
All right, go ahead.
The review of case number 2025-010, the planning commission approved the request of the installation of an electric vehicle charging facility at 7255 Interstate Boulevard on land consisting of 10.3 acres under C4 zoning by DeBerry Engineers Incorporated.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Stokes,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Kirkland, yes. Freeman,
Yes.
Fidel,
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next case, case number 2025-017. It's a request by the City of Horn Lake to amend the Code of Ordinance, Chapter 8, Article 3, Section 8-52, and Section 8-53 by replacing two sections with an updated set of code. I will turn this over to our director once again.
All right, thank you. All right, so there's a couple ways to go about this. I guess first I decided to put all of the current text, each letter on its own slide, but basically we can just fly through these just by stating what it actually is, which is letter A is we have the 2018 International Building Code, and next slide. And B is the 2018 International Fire Code. Next slide. C is 2018 International Residential Code. D is the 2018 International Existing Building Code. E is the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code. F is the 2017 National Electrical Code, NFPA 70. And then G is 2018 International Energy Conservation Code, and H is the 2018 International Fuel Gas Code. I is the 2018 International Mechanical Code, and J is the 2018 International Plumbing Code. So this is what's currently in our ordinance that the city has adopted for all of our inspectors and all of our builders and developers and everybody to adhere to, in addition to what is in our code of ordinances. Very recently, the city of Horn Lake has multiple department heads and the mayor have approached me with moving to a more updated set of codes. So as you saw in the previous slides, everything is 2017 or 2018. The city wants to move to the 2024 version of all of those. Now, for pretty much all of those, we do have amendments basically giving deletions or exceptions or amendments to each of those letters, each of those code books. But we did not have time to go through every single one of the 2024 books and ask everybody, what do you want to be amended or deleted or added? So what the city wants us to do is adopt all of the 2024 books and then amend each of those books as needed. So, and this primarily is pushed from our fire department. Our fire department wants us to go ahead and move to the 2024 International Fire Code. That way, when we get our ISO inspections, we'll get more points if we're adhering to the 2024 code rather than the 2018 code. And on a similar note, all the cities in DeSoto County are preparing to move to an updated version of each code book, which is most likely going to be the 2024 version. That will conclude that presentation. If anybody wants to discuss any of those codes, I'll try the best I can. But as far as we know right now, the mayor is okay with just moving to these new codes, and then we can amend as needed later.
And when you say amend, it would still come before us to be amended? I mean, because I was just seeing how that would work for the amendments. All right, do we have any questions for our director? All right, do we have a motion?
So everybody can access these. Well, okay, so it's kind of, that's a really good question. I totally understand. This is complicated for us as well. We don't have a copy like on hand, a physical copy of the 2024 books because unfortunately we have to purchase those books. And so we have not purchased those books before adopting them. But they are you are able to look these up online. So you could search any of those. Can you go back one slide? So if you Google any of those up there, you will be able to find the text in that whole book, but they don't let you copy and paste. They don't let you print it out. It's one of those things where you have to purchase the book, but you can go on there and reference whatever you want. So all of this is free to look at online.
Me. You asked a question and he answered that it's gonna come back in front of us once this is amended.
Okay, yeah, so so my understanding is once we adopt it'd just be the new codes as they're written, and then any amendments that they need to make to each section, it would come for us to look at before it goes on to the alderman.
Yes, is that stated in if we accept or deny that it's gonna come back in front of us for sure?
That's just the procedure. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have
Long,
to
I
spell it
don't-
out. It was just the procedure. I just wanted to make sure that
Yes.
that was the way.
As long as it comes back in front of us, that's fine with me, but like
Yes,
her,
it
I don't
will.
wanna do nothing blind.
Like just to clarify, like for example, the 2024 International Building Code. It's a physical book. It's a big book, and if at any time anybody here at the city finds an issue with something we don't like in that book, we can bring it here. Any one of us can, bring up, hey, let's amend this to say this text, and then it comes to the planning commission, and the board does the final vote on that. And that applies to any one of these books.
No, another question, is this a public hearing? I just need to make sure.
This is.
Okay, so I just need to do that before we do anything else.
Question is, how long these books come in, gonna take about 3 months to come in when you order them?
So I actually don't know the length of time it would take for them to come in, but as it's something that we would really need, I don't see there a reason for it to be coming in very slow.
Thank you.
Oh, and just to add on to that, I believe our ordinance does require us to keep a certain number of copies here at City Hall, which should be accessible to the public. So anybody, any contractor, any developer, any citizen, any resident can come in, and everybody does have the right to come in and read our physical book of ordinances and read any copy of these books.
I'm going to open this up to public. If anybody in the crowd would love to come up here and speak. All right, we're going to close our public section. All right, do we have a motion or do we need any other discussion?
And I'll make one quick note, sorry. For the Tesla charging station, we'll keep you updated on this. I know there might be some crossover in what y'all have to look at for any National Electrical Code or Fire Code or Building Code stuff. But right now we're under 2018 on each of those. But if we do move to 2024, we'll let you know. Yeah, the crossover is gonna be around the same time. This is set to go to the March 18th Board of Aldermen meeting, which will be the final vote on this.
Do we have a motion?
Andrew, could we possibly table this to next month so we have time to research it, ask questions, maybe have other input from the board that's not here?
That's a very fair request, but I will say the fire department will be very upset.
That was gonna be my question. I didn't know how quickly this is going
I
to
mean,
affect them.
technically, you could, can you go up one slide? Sorry. Technically, you could pick any of this apart. Technically, you could adopt just one of them, a few of them, all of them. I know that our fire department has their inspection coming up, and they're really wanting to be on the 2024 edition to not lose any points. But we don't know when our inspection's going to be. We don't have an exact date. I know our building inspector wants to move to the 2024 version, but there's not as much of a rush on that. And as far as all the others, there's really I'm not seeing any rush needed on the other codes. I will make one quick note that this week I am meeting with all the other planning directors in the city, in the county, because all the other cities do want to move to a new set of codes. But later this week, we are going to discuss what amendments other cities are thinking about. Basically, all the cities in DeSoto County want to make sure that we have the same codes with the same amendments, just to make it easier for the developers. That way, one city's not more strict than the other. One city's not, different than the others in applying its standards. But, I'm really just going, I'm really constructing this presentation based on the fire department's request on getting this started. So that's the only thing that I would request, is at least keep the fire code as proposed to move forward.
Has the other cities adopted this already, or that's still in the talks with them as well?
All the cities in DeSoto County are just talking about it right now, but I don't think any of them have made it to this step yet.
Gotcha.
All right, any other questions? All right, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move that we accept case number 2025-017. It's a request by the city of Horn Lake to amend City Code Ordinance, Chapter 8, Building and Building Regulation, Article 3, Technical Code, Section 8-52, Adoption of Code, and Section 8.8/53, addition, insertion, and deletion and changes by replacing two sections within the update set of codes.
All right, we got a motion to adopt the new codes. Second, do we have any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Vidal,
Yes.
Freeman, yes. Kirkland, yes. Carter,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
that's all.
And can I just clarify, just to be sure, that was for letters A through J? Is that what the motion was?
No, I didn't put that in the motion yet.
But he said, you did say all, so,
Yeah, I said
but you
all.
meant all A through,
Right.
A through J.
Everybody specified.
Okay, just checking.
Is everybody in agreement?
I stand correct, make sure it say all from A through J.
Okay. All right, on to our next case, case number 2025-018. It's a request by the city of Horn Lake to amend the Code of Ordinances Appendix A, Article 6, specifically to repeal L, which is for political signs. And I will turn this back over to our director.
All right, thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so the way I'm doing this one, right here, this is the text as it is exactly listed in Municode, which is our online, this is our website where you can look up our ordinances. It has letter L, political signs, and then it lists numbers 1 through 7, so we have 7 regulations on these political signs. And I guess just to be clear, this is a public hearing, and I'll go ahead and read these regulations. So number 1, it says political signs are limited to 1 sign per candidate per premises, except on it should say corner or multi-frontage lots, where 1 sign per frontage shall be allowed, with the exception of signs not exceeding 4 square feet, which require no permit. Number 2, no sign shall exceed the allowable square footage for the zoning district in which the sign is placed. No sign shall be permitted on private property without permission of the owner. Number 3, signs may not be posted until 45 days before. It must be removed 5 days after any election to which it refers. Notwithstanding the foregoing, signs may not be posted at any city-owned polling place until the day before any election to which the sign refers, and must be removed the day after such election. Number 4, permits will be required for all signs exceeding 4 square feet. Number 5, all signs must be located at least 10 feet off of the right-of-way. Number 6, the candidate represented on the sign shall be responsible for placement and removal of all signs. And number 7, any person who shall violate the terms, conditions, or provisions of this ordinance shall be guilty of misdemeanor, and upon conviction thereof shall be sentenced to pay a fine not to exceed $500, and in case of continuing violations, without reasonable effort on the part of the defendant to correct the same each day the violation continues thereafter, shall be a separate offense. Next slide, please. And so here we have the reasoning for the text amendment. The provisions of this section present constitutional issues with the First Amendment of the Constitution. Many other cities in the United States have faced lawsuits over very similar sign regulations relating to number placement and duration. For example, South Haven, Mississippi got rid of its political sign regulations after being sued in 2017 for similar ordinances, one of which being a 45-day time restriction for political signs. And Horn Lake has been fortunate to not be challenged on the same regulations, but it may very likely happen if this city is not careful. With the upcoming election for city positions approaching, many on city staff find it prudent to remove the political sign restrictions to prevent any opportunity for legal troubles, though at the obvious risk of potential sign clutter. And so, yeah, when South Haven got sued, it was during election time. And similarly, the city of South Haven had its planning department in charge of issuing political sign permits, and when some of these signs were not fitting with the regulations, they weren't able to get approved, and South Haven's planning director got sued, and the city of South Haven got sued for basically enforcing its ordinance. And so very recently our mayor has decided that it would be better if we just did not have these regulations. So, if we were to try to enforce them, then it wouldn't be there to enforce, so we can't get sued. And to further clarify, if you can go to the next slide. A similar kind of case has gone to the Supreme Court. So after the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court in Reed versus Town of Gilbert in 2015, it was determined that municipal sign ordinances must be content neutral in order to comply with the free speech clause of the First Amendment of the Constitution. Cities must not create different regulations for signs based on what type of signs they are. In other words, the city official cannot look at the content of a sign to determine which sign regulations to apply. No message should be treated differently than any other message, and any regulations applied to the physical display of those messages should be applied exactly the same. With Section L of political signs being a section made exclusively for signage containing political advertising, which content can only be determined by reading the message of each sign, and whereas political signs adhere to their own regulations, it would then appear that this section of regulations is unconstitutional based on the Reed versus Town of Gilbert decision. And then, next slide, please. And so, even prior to the 2015 Supreme Court ruling, there were various state-level court cases in which cities were getting sued over their sign ordinances. And so, to keep this presentation short, these court cases are not explained here, but there are numerous cases that can be found by quick Google searches online. Additionally, this ruling at the national level, various additional cities across the country have been sued for their sign ordinances, so at the federal level and at state level courts. So with these current sign regulations in letter L on political signs, while these may have kept the city clean from excessive and unsightly signage during election seasons and even afterward throughout the year, the regulations as currently written should be removed to protect the city from the bigger threat of possible legal challenges that may arise. And then, as with the previous case, in the meantime, after passing this text amendment, the city can still try to craft and pass legislation to carefully address the anticipated sign clutter that may result from this void of regulations. City staff is accepting that we will have to experiment by observing what physical effect this loss of sign regulation will have around the city, and then determine how to react afterward if any clear negative effects are experienced from this possible sign clutter that we're about to get. And that concludes the presentation.
Does anyone have any questions for our director?
I noticed in number 2, current text in the mini code, and I know that may be changed, but it's saying, based on what I'm looking at, is there different allowable square footage for the signs in different zoning district?
So you're talking about just the regular commercial signs?
The size and what you.
So yes, so for if a business proposes a sign for a monument sign for their business, it is 40 square feet, and so 40 square feet is the maximum that any business can go in commercial districts. It's been a long time since I had a proposal for anything in industrial or any other zone, but there are different size requirements based on zone.
Yes.
Help me understand this here about L. I understand what you say about the mayor and about the political sign. I understand the First Amendment. My concern is we want to try to expunge and eliminate Section L.
Yes, for the time being, there's cities all over the country are basically experimenting with replacing these ordinances into sneakier or more careful sign regulations, one of which a lot of cities are doing is creating a section for event signs rather than political signs or commercial signs or religious signs. So far from what I've seen, the Supreme Court and the state courts are okay with or have not really attacked the event sign ordinances. And basically a lot of cities are removing the word political, removing the word religious, removing the word commercial, and saying any special event can have a sign for 3 months if the applicant request a permit for it, but then they can only have it up for that amount of time. But then that also creates an administrative nightmare where you could have 1,000 people coming into City Hall to apply for event signs, which then code enforcement would have to go out and keep track of how long each yard has had their sign up, and code enforcement would have to keep a calendar for everybody and look at the permits. So you could go down that rabbit hole, which could technically work, but it's something that a lot of cities struggle with. A lot of cities are starting to delete these ordinances, and then others are doing event sign ordinances.
But that's why I was specifying this letter L. It just, we're dealing with political sign, period.
Yes, and that's the problem is literally having a section with special regulations for just political signs it is what is violating the free speech clause, because basically what we understand from the court rulings is that it's okay to have sign regulations for the purpose of traffic safety. Signs can't block your line of view on the roads. It can't block your sight of view at intersections. It can't tower over things. It can't block view from things around it. Cities are allowed to use the aesthetic reason for it. But when you look at a sign, what is on the sign can't determine what regulation to apply. So you can limit their height, you can limit their location, you can limit what types of lots they go on. And I don't know if I said number also. So number, but what the courts have really disliked seeing is time limits. Basically, you have to have a really, really strong argument on saying, well, we're okay with the sign being at this location, at this height, at this size, but only for this period of time. The courts really don't like picking and choosing the time periods. That's what I've gathered so far.
I got a two-part question. You brought up code enforcement, and how many we got in code enforcement right now? Just realistic, we got election coming up.
Yes, we've just have I think like 5 or so code officers.
So we're gonna have our code enforcement being police officer for going and picking up these signs. I got a problem with it, with Interstate Road. I live over on the west side of Horn Lake, and people leaving their signs out there, get all in the trenches, in the ditching, and grinding like that. I'm not happy with that.
I will say, even if we do get rid of this, there's another part in our code of ordinances where it says that bandit signs are not permitted. Bandit signs are a prohibited sign. So, the flimsy plastic signs with the 2 metal stakes that you put in the ground, those are still prohibited in the city. And if any of those are in the right-of-way, the code enforcement does have the authority to pick up any of those signs they find in the right-of-way. And then, in addition to that, Goodman Road and Highway 51 and Highway 301 happen to be state highways, so MDOT has authority it's MDOT jurisdiction there, so MDOT has authority to pick up any sign that they see in their right-of-way. So even deleting this, we're still going to have a ban on bandit signs.
But I'm speaking, we talking about political side. I understand political rights. I mean, First Amendment. I don't know all about the Constitution, freedom of speech. My concern is, if we delete this whole thing on political sign, who gonna pick it up? I don't want to delete this whole language. If we delete L and say, hey, we need to put a time limit on when they're gonna pick up these signs.
I mean, yeah, there is an element of the unknown here. We're gonna have to see how much of a problem it's gonna be. But you know, with bandit signs being a prohibited sign, and if these signs are left all over the city on private lots, code enforcement does have the authority to issue a violation notice for people having their bandit signs on their
Well,
property.
I don't think I'm making it clear. I'm talking about at the election over. With the political signs, it still be out there. I don't think eliminate that whole L. We want to do that. I like to amend it versus taking. I ain't got no problem with all of the however y'all want to do to pay for the signs and all that. If it so be it. I just want about after the hard work and the people that's lost, so losers, or they like saying, I ain't gonna pick it all
Yeah, I
up.
totally understand.
I just want about the police. We're gonna use our city workers, the double work to pick it up. I had to go and pick them up.
Yeah.
All on Interstate Road when they do it all around Arby's. How to be that, like I'm saying. And the state gonna come once every 2 weeks to drive by 'em, and like saying the thing fly all over. You know?
Yeah,
But
well-
I'm not knocking. I'm just saying I know I concur with it, but I like to amend L in reference to picking up the political side versus just deleting everything else that's in there. I understand the First Amendment, but the picking up in the trash, we try to keep our city clean. That's what I'm for. With that, I'll say.
I was just gonna say now, that the only downside to what you're saying is it's because it says the word political signs. We already,
Yeah.
there is a mechanism to pick up the bandits, so there shouldn't be anything left over. And if there are, the only thing this would say is that the candidates are not responsible, and I get the candidates should be responsible, but there would be, but since we can't have bandit signs, we shouldn't, they shouldn't be putting those out anyway if we get rid of this under just the current signage. Now, I don't know about the big signs, but if I understand if they're on private property, I don't know what the city can do with private property and the bigger signs that are on their property. I mean, because there are
Yeah.
people that still have other political signs on fences and stuff like that we don't have we don't have any control over because they're part on their property.
Right. We would definitely have to get really creative with this, very carefully. For us, one of the difficulties is there's different kinds of political signs. The most popular, by far, is the bandit signs, which are pretty easy to define. Although our ordinance doesn't really define it very much in depth. And then the other popular sign is the wood post. The very, very big, sturdy wood post signs with the panel in the middle, which we wouldn't define as bandit signs. They're some other unspecified, undefined sign in our ordinance. Definitely unregulated, unpermitted. So we would have to craft some kind of legislation to possibly count them as event signs and then require a permit for event signs for a certain time period, which would then mean it doesn't matter if it's just hear me out. What this could then mean is McDonald's can then build the same exact thing any time of year, and with the big wooden post and put a panel and have a hamburger sale advertised in that, because currently the city of Horn Lake does not allow banner signs to be posted in the yard. So what's really popular with the banner signs is you get the metal stakes and then a vinyl banner sign tied between the metal stakes. Well, these things are not allowed, but essentially what's the difference between that and the wood post political signs? That it's kind of a banner sign in a way. So you would have to create some kind of event sign ordinance that would allow the political signs, but then that means year round you're going to get businesses posting them up. But we could I would say we could charge money for them. But I think that's doable, but we'd have to be really careful about it.
Oh, sorry. At this time, I want to open it up to the public if anybody would like to speak. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. So do we have any other discussion, or do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, the only discussion I have is picking up these signs, you know.
And I truly understand, but I will say that after the last election, though a lot of people did a great job picking up their own signs, there were still signs that people had that didn't go pick up, regardless if they won or lost, they just didn't do. So it always, and like I said, the city doesn't take care of Goodman. That's the state. So
I will add also, during my research, I try to look at what other cities across the country are doing with all their ordinances. One example that caught my eye, just random Google searches, the city of San Antonio, they had a huge sign clutter problem with bandit signs and stuff like that. But one thing that I saw that they did was they specifically defined bandit signs, adding into its definition that they are literally defined as garbage, and that any city worker has the authority to pick up any garbage they see in the right-of-ways. And then they further define bandit signs as any signs taped to a stop sign, any signs stapled to a telephone pole, any sign you stick in the ground, any sign you tape to a door, any sign you glue up to a tree or a building or whatever. They have a really long definition of bandit signs, and then they tied it to it being garbage. Any city employee can pick up garbage wherever they see on city property or in any city right-of-way. And furthermore, code enforcement can give people violations for having garbage. So that's just one possibility that we could go into.
all right. Any other discussion? Do we have a motion?
After review of case number 2025-018, the planning commission recommends the repeal of L political signs in appendix A zoning, article 6, sign regulations.
Do we have a second? Do we have any other discussion?
I have a question. I was trying to play it out in my head before you did that. You talked about, so when it talks about sign clutter on here, this is not necessarily like these political bandit signs and stuff, sign clutter. You're talking about the potential for all these other signs that could possibly go up by us removing this?
Well, I mean, I was referring to the political signs. I mean, as the chairman stated, everyone was really good last election, but we don't know what's going to happen with the next one. If people's candidate wins, they might keep the signs out. If they're not happy with the outcome, they might leave the signs out. We don't know how people are going to react this time around. We know that there's a lot of candidates in this election. I believe, well, don't quote me on this, I'm not sure, but I think pretty much all of the wards have people running in them, and then multiple people running for mayor. So I was just told that we have a lot more signage that
I'm
we
sure.
might have seen before. But as far as this goes, if we get rid of this, I mean, this essentially gets rid of the time limit. So as it is right now, you cannot put up the signs more than 45 days before the election. And then there was something in here about signs are limited to one sign per candidate per premises. But I was reading in another court case, like what if one candidate is running on multiple hot topics and one candidate has multiple signs to endorse. I'm running on this issue, I'm running on this issue, I'm running on this issue. So other cities have gotten challenged on that one sign per candidate rule as well. And then also, one sign per candidate per premises, except on corner or multi-frontage lots, where one sign per frontage shall be allowed with the exception of signs not exceeding 4 square feet. So then again, what if that candidate only has one certain type of sign? And, you know, what if you have a household full of people that have different political views, and people in the same house have their own candidates who have their own different kind of signs that only come in certain sizes. So there's a lot of complexities that this ordinance doesn't really address. But yes, getting rid of this would theoretically lead to signs being out a lot longer than they may be now.
Andrew, the Constitution issue that there's a struggle with just singling out political signs when it has to be the same rule for all signs.
And
That's where you come into the legal problems.
I have something to say. I have no problem in election year putting your sign out all year. They just need to be taken up in a specified time after the election.
And I will say this
You know,
last
I
election,
mean-
I think everybody did a good job of pretty much cleaning up the city right after, but you do have sometimes you'll find some in a ditch. But I think sometimes those candidates might not know it's down. I seen like one of Geis one time, we just went down there and picked it up, right? And a lot of us work together no matter what party you're in. We just pick up the signs. They don't need us going all over the city. So I think we can clean it up together too. So I believe I believe people will be mature and clean up their stuff after this election too. But we just can't have a singled out political sign
regulation.
when it should be all the signs under the same regulations.
I'll second his motion.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Stokes,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Kirkley, yes. Freeman,
Nay.
Fidel,
Nay.
All right,
three
but
and
it passes 3-4, 2 against. All right, and that brings us, there is no other business. Do you have anything?
No, that's it.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion. Come on, you got me, James. Come on, get you one in.
Right.
I make a.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye. All right, y'all have a great